Hi, I'm Daniel Nyman. On behalf of the Forum for Healthcare Strategists, as well as our colleagues at Aha Media, welcome and thank you for joining us for Evidence-Based Marketing, Strategies to Drive Alignment, Support, and Success. Today's marketers know that even the best digital transformations can fail if you can't bring your internal teams and stakeholders along for the ride. Building smart strategies and using data to help leadership, service lines, and other internal partners understand the vision, feel invested, and support the change is a must. In today's webinar, you'll hear real-world lessons from healthcare marketing leaders who have successfully introduced, explained, and gained buy-in for major digital initiatives, including how they navigated the internal hurdles along the way. Some notes before we begin. First, we'll be conducting 2 audience polls during the program, so please be sure to participate when those appear on your screen. Second, if you'd like to ask a question, please enter it into the question and answer pane located on the bottom of your screen at any time. Our panelists will respond to as many questions as they can in the time we have. With that, I'll turn the program over to Ahava Leibtag, CEO of Aha Media Group, who will be leading today's discussion. Ahava?
Hi, Daniel. Thank you so much. And thank you to Debbie for having us here today. I'm very, very excited to be here. Before we begin, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself and Aha Media Group. So I am the CEO of Aha Media Group. We've been in business for about 20 years now, which is kind of crazy. And the poll results are up. So I will take a look at these in a second. Just so you know a little bit about us, we provide digital strategy and content strategy consulting. We also do a lot in the copywriting space, SEO, social media strategy, and we also help with those massive website redesigns and website migrations that many of you are going through. So please reach out if you need us. We're very, very proud of our client relationships, including the 2 people I have on the screen here today with me. So with that, I would love to ask both of them to introduce themselves. John, if you'll start.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is John Davey. I'm the Vice President of Marketing Technology at Mount Sinai Health System, which is a large academic medical center system in New York City. New York City is a super competitive healthcare market. This subject is, as a result, super important, and I'm really excited to talk with you all today about that.
And hi, I'm Linda Ho. I am the Director for Marketing Technology, Analytics, and Operations at the University of California, San Francisco. I have been with the University of California for almost 3 decades, so an old fogey here, but had the opportunity to work both campuses in Los Angeles, UCLA, as well as now in San Francisco at UCSF. Just an avid kind of supporter of digital marketing and MarTech. So I love that space. I'm kind of a geek, and you can always talk to me about MarTech stuff, and I love that stuff. Also a mom of 4, along with a set of twins who are going to have their behind the wheel driving test today. So we are super nervous in our household of either a pass or a fail. So both are making us nervous. It's great to be here with you.
I hope it's a pass for both of them and not a pass for one and a fail for another. That would be hard with twins. Okay, so today with all of you here, I'm very excited to have this conversation. We're going to talk about what evidence-based marketing looks like in practice, tailoring your messages, how to overcome common objections. I'm sure none of you have that. And of course, it would be malpractice to have a webinar in 2025 without talking about AI. So we are going to touch on that subject as well. For the answer to the poll, though, before we start, because Linda and John, I think it will help, sort of jumpstart our first question. But which stakeholder group is the hardest for you to convince of marketing's value? Clinical leadership came in at 29%. The C-suite came in at 46%. The strategy team came in at 11%, and operations came in at 11%. And then the other 4% was other. So if you could share in the QA who that would be. I should not be surprised at these results, and yet I am, because I think it's really unbelievable that at this point the C-suite does not see the value of marketing. So let's talk about what evidence-based marketing really looks like in practice. And this phrase came about because when I first started as a freelance writer, I used to have meetings with the doctors to ask them questions, and they sort of always answered me with data and talking about evidence-based medicine. And it became very clear to me that that was more important to them than anything else, that if you showed them a number or a study, they bought into it. So what does that look like, Linda, for you, in the various roles that you've had? How do you sort of really come at, whether it's the C-suite or anybody else, to show them how you use data to make really important decisions about marketing? And then how do you plead the case that marketing is really important?
Yeah. I totally agree with you, Ahava. And, you really can't go into any meetings now without data and without this evidence-based marketing. So we really, in my previous organization, worked on some dashboards that we felt were very strong. And we had worked through this an entire year of really putting together all of our, our digital assets in a way that we can figure out, well, how can we show this in a very simple way? We can't be droning on and on with a million slides, right? But could we put a Tableau dashboard up that is just easily accessible by folks within the organization and could be just very transparent, right? So we put together, the team and I, a way to then pull our finance data, our hospital finance data, our ambulatory finance data, along with all of our encounters data together to figure out, okay, can we show how many inquiries we get? So you can kind of see that. How many inquiries do you get within a year? This is a little bit more than a year's worth of data here, but you can see we looked at form leads, right? So form fills and leads, how many came through, and out of those, how many actually became visits. And we only noted these visits as after a first visit was completed, not these cancellations that also appear when you have, appointments. So completed visits became another data point. And then how many unique patients did we get out of this? We really looked at that number and then started to pack, as you see in the middle, what does this look like? What kind of age group are they in? So that you can say, okay, well, they're the bulk of them we saw in the 19 to 44 age group, right? But you can't weed out like the, older people. People say, oh, older people don't ever go online. That's not true. You can really see in this kind of data. And we looked at like, what is the source? And this really helped us with our advertising, where we placed things and, what we did. So how many people came in through the web form? Was the web form, a source of, much of this or not? You can see that they were. Now, open scheduling, if you all have Epic, open scheduling was just like easy, right? It's like, if we can get that up there, that is also triggering. And you can see things like second opinion, video visits, community events. We had partnerships with sports teams. When we were there, how were we able to track that and how it benefited us, right? So QR codes, things like that at the games were able to help us track. Did those come back and turn into, patients for us? Other ways like advertising was also there. Things like, are we advertising on Health Grades? Did that do anything? Are we advertising on Yelp? Did that do anything? This really helped us to move dollars around as needed and really work for us there. And then on the right there, you'll start to see us trying to figure out, well, what specialties did they come in for? One of our organizations was really about primary care first. We established everybody with primary care, and then what we would do is feed them into our specialty care, right? But this helped us to say, okay, the volumes that came in, where did they get? They came to be established as new patients as primary care. And then we looked at the various locations that they were being seen at. Top insurances really were also strong for us as to, what we really needed. And then we could kind of see the top doctors. We like to take a look at that to really figure out, was it because of a news article that they were, really being seen, or was it truly like scheduling that they were there for? So this allowed us to really look at that, add up our revenue for that as well. And then to be able to then say to our C-suite and say to our CEO, CFO, we're not saying that we saw these patients ourselves. We're saying that had we not done these things, this would not have happened, because these are all new patients. And we looked at it like 3 years worth, like they had not had any activity within 3 years, to really say, it really showed our organic channels being strong, but also really allowing us to then put the right dollars in our paid channels, right, to do that. And when you see over on the left side, you can't see some of this because it's really a live dashboard, but I can say, let me just look at it. Acquisition means you just brought in Linda, right? And that's it. And Linda is part of this number. But Linda, as you had mentioned to you guys, I've got a family of 6, and Linda brought in the family of 6. So if I change this to really like show all, it's going to show downstream revenue, which is like X times more that we've done that. So that's really why I really thought that having a dashboard like this, showing marketing's ROI, just to like get us, started off like, hey, we know our numbers now. What can we do to like help you neurosurgery or help
Right.
you radiation oncology, right?
It's a great example, I think, of showing data to really convince stakeholders that not only are you valuable, but like this is what you're doing and why it's important to do it. So John, I would love to ask you about how you handle this at Mount Sinai. And then what I want to ask you to address, and both of you can answer this question after John talks about it, is have you ever been in a meeting with a stakeholder where they wanted to do something and you could pull up a piece of data and say to them, let me show you why that's not going to work?
Yeah, okay, those are 2 key points. And I think, when you look at those poll results, a lot of those people in all those categories are used to seeing these kind of dashboards with data on them. That's how they're used to measuring success and everything else they have to commit resources to. They historically haven't had that context for marketing, so it's kind of been like a black box. What's like, why does marketing work? How does it work? What does it work? And because of that, historically, it's always been, well, it's people's opinions. And unfortunately, plus fortunately, however you want to look at it, our leadership in a lot of these roles are doctors. And we all know doctors have lots of opinions, and they have opinions about things that they have a lot of information about, and they have huge experience and expertise, and they went to school for years and years and years. And then they have equally strong opinions about things that they don't. And oftentimes that's marketing. And I'm sure we've all seen that experience where a stakeholder comes to us and they want something specific. And for me, this all helps to take a step back. What's the business goal, stakeholder? And then we'll talk about the best ways of meeting that business goal. And then when they still object, because again, everyone has strong opinions, I say, I don't know, I think you should do this. It's really important to me that we do a billboard or that we do an ad in the back cover of the New York Times, Sunday magazine, or whatever it is. That's when the data really comes to the fore, where you can say, well, we don't have to have a discussion about your opinion versus my opinion. Here's data that shows to achieve that business goal, if it's bringing in a new patient for primary care or for breast care, here's the right places to find those patients. Here's the right places. Here's the right message to put in front of those patients, and then here's the real value that when you bring in those folks. And it's really been so helpful, I think, because it just removes it from he said, she said, whose opinion is stated the most strongly to data. And the last piece I'd say is it's the showing the data in a visual way, like Linda just did, again, which they're used to that, seeing data in that context, but also we're marketers, like telling the story of the data. Because oftentimes a lot of these data metrics are things that stakeholders aren't familiar with. So it's showing the data and then walking them through it as a story.
I think that's a great point, because when I was looking at the Tableau dashboard, Linda, I was thinking to myself, there's a lot of education that goes into each one of these to explain to them what this data actually means when you push it in, and then what it means when you actually get the results from it. Linda, have you ever been in a room where you were able to pull this dashboard up and say, let me tell you why I don't think this is the best idea, and have a substantial mind-changing discussion with a stakeholder?
I think that this type of dashboard, it does need to, walk them through it, right? But it does really help for when you're meeting with your chief strategy officer. You've got some strong, data behind what you're saying, and that you will then get that kind of buy-in for something like this, or a campaign that you have some analytics for, and you actually can show, okay, well, this is what organic did, and this is what paid did. I think something like that paired with kind of like a quick snap at looking at a campaign, a CRM campaign or a life cycle campaign, doing something like that would really get the buy-in from your CSO. And where I think I came out of that with, well, how many more of these can we do? so that really helped kind of change I think when you frame it and you start it with this versus like, here's what I want to do, you start with kind of like, here's the data that you can actually get. And the nice thing about a lot of digital marketing now is you do have so much, from the impressions to the clicks to the form fills, all of that. So we're, it's easier for us than to say, okay, the billboard did this, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I love that idea of sort of going in and presenting them with a case study or a story and the data that accompanies it. Like you said, John, sort of painting that story for them, thinking like a marketer, and then walking out and saying, okay, well, I've gotten them excited enough that they're willing to give me money to do 5 more of these. That's like the perfect way to make that.
So even in our organization right now, we're saying, yeah, there's a dashboard and you can access it. But the next thing is to actually like really get it into a meeting with them on a regular basis. So we were thinking, taking a new dashboard that we've developed here and, putting it in a slide deck to really kind of highlight certain things and then having it ready for our CCMO to really present to, her boss.
I have found that there's nothing that these stakeholders love more than a live dashboard. So when you argue with them about SEO and you pull up Google Trends or SEMrush and you show it to them and they're like, click that thing, wait, I want to filter that. And they get so excited about it. And then they walk away inspired with trust that you're making decisions that's best for them based on the numbers that you have in front of you. I always talk about the decision triangle. I always talk about there's 3 points on a decision triangle. The first is data, the second is politics, and the third is common sense. And I always say they all have to weave together to help with these stakeholders. But if you don't have the data, then you're just having a nonsense conversation because you're arguing politically about who's in charge and no common sense is coming into the room. So I think the data is, the real anchor point on that triangle. We would love to poll the audience and find out if you guys have a dashboard and how you use it. I think this is a fun way to sort of find out if Linda's going to get a whole bunch of calls after this webinar. Could you build me one too, Linda? And of course, somebody did ask the question, Linda, so I answered it, but in case anyone missed it, the dashboard was created in Tableau. But I do think that these dashboards are really important. And I know that for us, when we present to clients, the more results we have, the better off we are because we can always show that the data is moving in the right direction. And then I always say to people, don't be upset if it's moving in the wrong direction, because that's a great piece of information to know that we need to course correct, and move forward. So
I learned a lot from you, Ahava, in terms of just, content and writing the right kind of content, just to help me, meet expectations as I go to meetings with, I had a meeting with, I think it was our chief of the aortic center where, he was all about like, I know this content, I can write this content, you should use this kind of content as we're waiting for folks to like answer this poll. I'm just going to recall this story, but I think it was written like 16th grade level or something like that. And, with kind of the work that we had been doing with Ahava Media, we were really able to convince him that we need to really be writing it at this 6th to 8th grade reading level for the patients, not for him and his peers, but for the patients to understand it. You didn't need to like go on and on. You really need to be succinct. So that was really a successful, experience after learning that from you.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, the most convincing argument you can ever make to a stakeholder is to pull up the literacy rates in your state. And then all of a sudden they're like, uh-oh, I didn't really realize that. So the answer to the question is, do you currently have a marketing dashboard that shows direct ROI or contribution margin? 19% said yes, and it's regularly used to make decisions. 45% said yes, but it's not fully built out. 26% said no, but we're working on one. And the last 10% of people said no, we have no plans for one yet. So really interesting to see that. I think, the majority of our audience is thinking about it, but it's very clear that people are inside of that messy middle of trying to figure out how to take all these different data streams that you have. I think it can feel overwhelming sometimes to figure out how to put them together and to get the signal from the noise. What do stakeholders really want to know? So that's our next question. And John, I'd love to sort of start with you on this one. How do you tailor the different data points that you have and all this information that you can share with them, especially, looking at the results of the first poll, the fact that the C-suite is really resistant, what kinds of data helps to convince them the most versus the clinical leadership versus marketing has got a lot to do with operations right now. Like they're merging together more and more. So how do you prepare the right data and how do you figure out what the signal from the noise is for your stakeholders?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge for everybody, but it's an opportunity. And I would start with saying, again, going back to the business need, okay, what is the bottom line data that is directly most connected to the business need? And if it's a basic one, like let's bring in new business, new patient business, it's most compelling if you can track, if especially as Linda said, for all the digital marketing initiatives that are completely trackable, all the way into if you can follow it into the arrived appointment and the value of that appointment, the dollar and cents value of that, and then as Linda was saying, it's her family of 6, like, and all the other related business connected to that, everything else from that appointment on to screenings, tests, follow-ups, procedures, and the value of all that. If you can track that, for instance, if the main goal is we need to build new business, new appointment volume, and if, for instance, if we want to focus it on new and commercially insured, again, that's all flaggable and trackable. And I always think it's good to start with that. Just to loop back for a second on something else you said a minute ago, Ahava, about the data being, positive and negative. These data are so important. I think you earn trust by showing both. If you cherry pick only the positive data, people will begin to doubt you. If 100% of what the story you're telling with data is all working perfectly, I found in my experiences, and I'm sure it's the same all of us, that if you show everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly, it earns more trust. And that's an important lesson that my leadership has taught me. You have to take the negative data just as seriously, as long as then you do something about it and you can make changes. That's the beauty of data and how we can look at this in real time and make changes.
Okay. So Linda, I want you to answer the question, but I want to keep pressing on this point, John, because sometimes I feel like one of our values here at Ahava Media Group is stay curious longer. And we actually developed this value because I rush into judgment. It's like to slow me down specifically. Isn't it so easy to walk into a room and say, I deal with this data all day long. I know what to do. Like, how do you set yourself up to be in a position where you actually really want to hear their opinion when you feel like you know it better than anyone?
That is a huge challenge for somebody like all of us who are like, I know this, or just hold on, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to give you the answers to the test. That, of course, is counterproductive. So it's to do it that way is going to shoot yourself in the foot and get you less likely. So you're right. It's like any good communicator, understanding your audience, understanding what they know, what they don't know, and what you want them to know. And to me, that starts with understanding, put yourself in their shoes. They have a million of these meetings. They have so many requests for their resources. They have to decide. It isn't as simple as you just tell me, make this point, make it clear with data, and then boom, okay, we'll give you the money. It's not that simple for them when, especially system leaderships, folks, C-suite, heads of strategy, that kind of thing. Even chairs and other, senior stakeholders, they have limited resources too. So it's understanding what they need to achieve. It's showing them with data how you can help with that in a positive ROI, so that you're showing, you give us $1, we're going to bring you back $3.
Great. Linda, so 2 questions for you, really. How do you decide which data to show? And John's point about like showing all the ugly data, Linda, I know you do that too, because you're very transparent. I think that makes you such a powerful leader. But how do you keep an open mind when you go in? Because you know it better than anybody.
I think that, instead of doing you're showing your data in PowerPoint, putting it in a dashboard that is like a real-time dashboard, as real-time as you can get, really does help with that transparency. So there's a layer with that dashboard that you can get down to a specific service line. And so this is where I want to make sure that, yes, you are doing a larger, health system dashboard, but you need to be able to figure out a way that you can, when you go into a meeting with neurosciences, whether it's neurology or neurosurgery, that you can really, filter down on exactly what you're showing them for them. This is what we're seeing for you. And you can go all the way down to, volume of calls that are being, that are coming in for them, volume of web forms that are coming in. And this was a case that I actually had to implement because we were looking at, should this neurosciences group use the call center, or should they continue to do this work and answer the phones and answer the forms on their own? We were able to come to the table with our dashboard to really show, in this past year, this is how many forms came through. This is how many that were scheduled. These were not scheduled, right? And we were able to then connect that to the actual dollar value of that, but then show, had we been able to handle all of this volume through, a dedicated call center or dedicated outbound calling back, that, that dollar amount would have been higher, or any of our advertising efforts would have closed a lot more. So I think that's where you would go into the more specifics of the, getting down to the right level of, okay, here, Dr. So-and-so, this is actually how much is coming in through our website for you right now, or that we're doing advertising. This is sort of the extra, let's get this other part too.
Yeah, that's a great example. I love that because it's really true. It's like, I'm showing you exactly what I'm showing you, and you can make a decision now. Like, you have it in front of you. This is what we can do for you if you let us take it over. Here's how you're doing on your own. And to John's point, what's the business goal? What's best for the business here? And what time could we free up for your people if they didn't have to do this? Could they deliver better patient care, get better scores, that kind of thing? So it just, to me, again, highlights the importance. So for those of you that are not, don't have a dashboard in place or are still playing around with it, I think Linda and both Linda and John are making strong points for how those can really, really help you. Okay, so let's address an elephant in the room. Common objections to marketing. We don't have access. You're spending too much money. I don't see the value. I want a billboard. I want the back of New York Times Magazine. There's no way for me to track that to show you that has value. It's almost like you put on your armor and you're like, I'm ready for every objection they're going to have. So talk to me, and let's start with Linda. What are some common objections that you get in almost every meeting, and how do you respond to them? And when do you decide to use data to respond to them? And when do you decide to say, let me think about what you're saying and come back to you? Because sometimes I find that we do have the answers on our fingertips, and sometimes it's better to create a little friction so that they do think that you're thinking about what they want to do. That's my secret tip.
I'll hold on to that one. I would say that, we don't have access, so why are you doing any marketing? Right? I think that's very, very common. Now, we may not have access for certain parts of their service line, but we might have access for other parts. And I think that's really where that marketing and strategy does really come in together to say, we can't really market prostate cancer entirely, right? But perhaps we can market our HIFU procedures a little bit more, because we have some opportunities to do, high intensive, focus ultrasound, for instance, for that. So I think that's really where we come together to kind of look through that, and then pull together some opportunities for a CRM campaign where we're really dedicating our efforts to where we do have capacity or we do have access, and then we can build a better, path into, increasing that. So I think that you have opportunities to talk to these chiefs and chairs about opportunities that are smaller. And I think I would even say things like, colonoscopies, it's really maxed out, and getting a colonoscopy, which is super duper important, is also hard to get, right?
Yes.
But can we look at different ways of doing that? Can we look at, applying our CRM campaigns to those who have not gotten one, who've lapsed in one, and start to focus on your own internal before you look at external? How can you take care of your own patients that have lapsed, not having this for 2 years, 3 years, whatever that is, and then bringing it in and looking at other alternatives? Well, maybe they just don't want to have this procedure because they're scared. Maybe we can offer them a fit kit instead in the mail. Maybe these opportunities are an easier way to bring this and help them get that care. And I think that's where that kind of working together.
The brainstorming together about what you could do. How about you, John? How many times a day do you get common objections or uncommon objections? And if you want to share one of those with us.
Yeah, I'll take it from the macro and the micro, and we get common, uncommon, and everything in between on a daily basis. And again, it's reminding ourselves not to be defensive about it, because that doesn't help. I would say from the micro level, as Linda was saying, if you're meeting with chairs and chiefs, almost always, even at these big health systems with superstar, Dr. Famouses, there are always new doctors who are being added on in every specialty, and those new doctors need business. And it's a frustrating fact that we give our customers, patients, like, oh, we put the name out there of our Dr. Famous, and everyone wants to make an appointment with Dr. Famous, but then Dr. Famous doesn't have an appointment availability for the next 6.5 years. And so tying that to some other data that we're seeing is that people in a lot of cases, not every case, but in healthcare, they want convenience over even sometimes brand or even expertise, which is really scary. But we can't turn our eyes away from some of these realities. The marketplace is changing. People's expectations are changing. If they just want a doctor and we have a new doctor in a service line that has open panels, we should connect that potential business to that doctor. And with these tools, we can do that. And I think that's what I'm saying from a micro level. It's connecting. We have all the data to see how many searches are there in our zip codes around colonoscopy services near me. And then if you share that data, and obviously a lot of these chairs and chiefs are looking at all the market share data to begin with, but it's extra data to show, oh, we may need to add on some resources to do more. Especially if it's a feeder, like any of these screenings.
Yes.
So that's a big piece of it. And then the macro, so that's the micro side. The macro side of it is really to understand, again, when they have all these competing needs, and you have to understand, like, okay, what are your competing needs and where can we help? Where does our tools, how can we, in a really clear way, we'll prioritize some of this data to meet some of your priority needs.
That's great. I like the fact that when you both said things that like didn't occur to me, so it just shows how practiced you are. But the idea of like trying to get them to think, okay, you might not have access, but go for something but like the high food. Like, let's get people in that maybe don't even know that we offer that, or that kind of thing. And then John, when you were talking about solving the big famous doctor problem, right, in the 6.5 years, using the data to alert them about things they don't even know themselves, that they don't think about, I think is really important. And I think both of you have really, to me, hammered home the idea of building trustworthy relationships with these stakeholders and being prepared for their questions, but also leaving open, some room to educate them and also to listen to what they have to say and what they're trying to do.
I'd like to maybe address those who are working on building their dashboards, because
please.
Not everybody has folks at the ready to be building these things. So what can you do in marketing? How are you going to build these dashboards, right? So I think I was able to successfully really partner with our data team, and I think that's really key is reaching across that and connecting with them and really bringing their expertise into this and helping with that. So at my last organization, working through the chief data officer, I was able to get a contact that it was like, okay, Linda, whatever ideas you have, you talk to this person. You don't have to fill out a single ServiceNow ticket at all. Just talk to them and they'll figure out how we can get you what you need. And that person ended up like speaking with me at HCIC just because of that great partnership that was there. I am very lucky at my new organization to come in with, a great CCMO who was very forward thinking to say, okay, we'd like to have 2 people from the data office actually dotted line right into Linda. So they're dedicated to Linda. So that's really where you want to be. So then you've got, okay, this person has access to all the data. This other person is going to be your visualization person to put together these dashboards in a visual way. So, get to that point. And, sometimes if you don't have that, you might have to just start with some contracted work to get you going. But I would say that it's not only about the dashboards. When you look at data that could be useful, we looked at just even our website. When we surface up, doctor results on our website, what can we be doing in a smarter way? And this was where I, really paired with the data team to say, is there a better way that I could look at percentage availability of each of the doctors based on whatever data you guys already are collecting? And if you can give me that percentage availability within the next 10 days, computed on a daily basis, sent to me, I can actually then pull those folks up higher in the results score and push the ones you can't schedule for 9 months down further, because that's going to improve your patient experiences. Like, oh, Ahava's looking for a, movement disorders doctor. There's one right now that I can make an appointment with. So, at least, or even if you have to request an appointment, you can get them because they've got availability within the next 10 days. That's going to make Ahava a lot happier than going, I got to wait
Totally.
9 months to see somebody with this, for this situation. That's where you can really like pair with them and like find a way to solve a problem. Now, we did that computation together. We brought it to like the ambulatory operations committee first to say, here's what we're doing. Here's the math. What do y'all think? We got the approval before we put it into play. So you got to make sure you get through all of those hoops. But that's, another way to use data.
That's huge.
I would just echo that. That's so, you talked about the decision triangle, Ahava, and part of it is common sense. Common sense is building trust with these people that you need to partner with. And for data, we need the data teams. And it's not always been the case everywhere I've worked where our leadership has earned that team's leadership's trust. So they haven't shared data. You need them to do that, to make this case, especially when you want to connect it back to the arrived appointment and the value of all that. And it is super sensitive data. And we all know there's so many guardrails as there should be, that and all so many hoops that we need to jump through. So we have to prove, trust us with this data. We'll tell us every single rule. We'll follow every single rule to the T and get that trust. I think there's that piece of it. And the other thing is our access team. We've partnered with them. We have some new access leadership over the last year or so. And they built a great dashboard in Tableau showing where by service line, by location, we have 14-day availability, appointment availability. And you can see when you use the two sets of data and you overlay them, there's giant opportunities for us in marketing to target those areas where we do have real-time availability.
Yeah. One of my favorite business stories, and then we'll turn our attention to AI, but I think this is a really interesting sort of idea. At McDonald's, they're able to tell the sales of every single store by how many Happy Meals are purchased. And if Happy Meal sales go down, the overall general dollar amount that each store makes is going to go down. So what they do is they get this data every single day. And when they see that in a particular store, the Happy Meals purchases are going to go down, they buy every leftover radio and internet ad available, and they push people towards that location. And what you're describing is really like a future state that hospitals could get to, where you could actually like send out, AI could trigger, okay, we've got 7 colonoscopy doctors who have 30%, availability in the next 3 weeks. Tell people we have appointments available right now, please schedule. And wouldn't it be so interesting for us to get there? And that's a real consumerism use case, as opposed to all this other stuff people talk about, which I'm not sure is really what people want in healthcare. So I think that that's just, those examples are such great examples of how we can really be thinking way more creatively about what the data can tell us, and then how we can apply what we know about marketing to use that data to solve that business problem. So great examples. I love it. I want to ask everybody to answer the next poll about AI. Like I said, it would be malpractice not to talk about it right now. So we took the content approach to AI today. Obviously, that's an interest of ours from a digital strategy and content perspective. This is changing so fast. I have to be honest with you. I have a little AI fatigue. Like, it's all over LinkedIn. It's all over every article, every email newsletter I get. I'm kind of like, guys, you got to chill. On the other hand, it's literally changing as fast as every single day. Last week, Google, released AI mode, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago. I don't know. It's like time soup at this point. But today I read this really interesting article from Content Marketing World, and I'll post a link on LinkedIn, but they basically said, stop giving your content to Google, because all they're doing is they're flattening your really great content and regurgitating everything that you're saying in these AI overviews. And they're killing your traffic, and they're killing your ability to grab that top of the funnel. And for healthcare organizations, that was really our strategy. Explain what the problem is, get them on the page, and explain how you're going to solve it for them, and move them into an appointment or into some sort of nurturing, device like emails or whatever. So, and they were talking about how, people should really create way more gated content. And it's funny because I said this, I remember saying this a long time ago, I think hospitals should do more with gated ebooks and things like that. So I want to talk about that. The answers of the poll are that 21% of you feel highly confident about the changes that AI and search, your team's ability to handle that. 61% are somewhat confident, and 18% are not at all confident. And I have a feeling that all of you cycle through all three of those confidence spaces probably multiple times a day. So if you feel alone, don't, because I think we're right there along with you. But so the first question I want to ask both of you is, and this relates directly to what this webinar is about, which is, how are you educating your stakeholders about the drops in traffic, the drops in top funnel? And then what are your plans to combat that? And how, are you taking a wait and see approach? Are you just, we're consulting with everybody. You've got to write your content differently now. It really has to be written for AI overviews. It has to be even more semantic than it used to be. Long tail is what's going to matter to people. John, do you want to start with this one off and talk about how you're educating stakeholders, and then how, what strategies you have in place?
Yeah, absolutely. I think number one, if you're confident one day, the landscape has changed the next day. So I think being overly confident, this is changing so much. It's an existential threat. It's, as in some ways, a bigger transformation than all the other big transformations we've all lived through in our marketing space in healthcare. But I would say, I heard someone say, if for those people who are waiting, for instance, to use the AI tools, don't wait, because the longer you wait, the harder and steeper the learning curve will be. Same thing with educating our leaders about how this is changing. We can't stick our head in the sand and pretend that. I guess it's really important to note our leadership, and to remember any leadership who are not in our world, they don't necessarily track this the way we are. They don't necessarily know that the world has changed. It's probably surprising, not surprising to lots of folks on this call, that when you meet with stakeholders, oftentimes they don't even bother to look how their patients come to them. For instance, so they don't even know how it used to work, let alone how it's changed drastically now. The world is changing under our feet. How they get business is changing. It's already changed massively, and the massive changes are going to accelerate. And so we have to start educating. We've started that, and it's really, all the lessons about communication come in you got to tell people multiple times, and you have to tell it as a story that a human can understand, and how it impacts them. That's the last piece. It's tell me how this is going to impact me. Everyone is understandably selfish that way. And so it's framing the education around those.
What about you, Linda? How are you
just on a personal note, I am in the middle of looking at repainting the exterior of our house, and oh my gosh, I went to AI, and I use Perplexity for my searches. I ended up trying a few of them just to say, well, I'm not very visual. I can't imagine, right? So I have to think can you show me what it would look like if I did this color and that color, And oh my God, it was so easy to just get onto Gemini and upload a photo of my house and say, change the exterior color to this, and change the paint trim around the house to this, and boom, it was there. And it's just amazing. So we all have to, it's going to make things easier. I think with our department this past year, our retreat was really, we had a focus on AI and how we can use it, not to replace but really to make it more efficient. This year is really about how can we build in efficiency for the marketing department? What can we do? We've got a lot of cost cutting and hiring freezes, things are going on. so we really need to show that we are, just being good stewards of the dollars that we have and what we are doing. So really, I'm encouraging my team to really look and see where you can add AI to your job. What can we do? We actually have UCSF has an AI called Versa. We actually have our own, AI that's used, and we were looking at, could we use Versa to help look at our providers and look at their financial kind of like stats to help identify clinical keywords to apply to them instead of asking them to apply clinical keywords. Like if you're a urologist, what do? Help us pick your keywords and log in and this, that.
Yeah.
Could we just go ahead and look and see what they're normally doing with their financial codes and say, well, Dr. Leibtag does like these things most of the year. Let's make sure that those keywords are on their, profile and people find her for that thing. So we're looking at all those opportunities to make it easier for us. You could still, as a provider, log in and, choose and pick, those keywords yourself. But
Right.
could we look and do that? And what would that take us to do?
Yeah.
Could we look at ways where, the provider, I think you might not like this idea, but for the provider to actually like put their CV into Versa and then get a nicely generated bio that then they could start with something and then edit. Versus, it's always harder to start from scratch, right? So to have something and then to have that.
I love that idea. They just won't do it. Somebody else has to do it for them.
But with thousands of providers, you can't be writing everybody's bios. Right. So how can we think about it in a smart way? And can our Versa adapt to our writing style guide, our brand voice, and use that same thing to write that, in that tone? So just ways to use AI in a way that it doesn't mean like we're replacing jobs, but like how we make it more efficient for us.
Yeah, no, so go ahead, John.
I was going to say, just and looping back again to your point about Google and all these other tools that are taking our content and creating a zero-click response that doesn't send traffic back to us. In a way, this is one of those things not to be triggered by, because that train is already leaving that station. We're seeing that. We know some of our
it's left. It's gone.
Right, it's left.
It's gone.
And so it's not, again, burying our head in the sand about that. It's like, well, what are we going to do about it? So how are we going to make sure we're part of that zero-click response? And then how are we going to make sure that when we are part of that, it's really in an engaging way that they're going to choose us as whatever the question was that got answered in that result. I think that's what the world has changed. And again, most people in leadership on every level, from C-suite down to the doctors themselves, they don't know that yet. And you're right, the train has already left.
Yeah. So I rarely predict the future because I just think it's pointless, but I will tell you, and I'm willing to put some money down on this. So contact me later if you want to get a pool going, but they're going to monetize those GPTs. Right. That's just what's going to end up happening. So, when you said the ground is shifting beneath our feet, and I feel like this is the biggest transformation that we've had, the last big transformation I can think of is social media. And I remember when social media started and there were people who were, their hospitals used to turn off your access to Facebook. Like, you think about it now. And then it sort of evolved into this, oh my gosh, we need to get patient experience and customer service on the pages here. And, everybody created their own stuff and it was such a mess. And I just think it goes to prove, like 10 years ago, you couldn't get a job as a social media manager at a hospital. And now it's community manager is a huge job. And Linda, to your point, I think even more jobs are going to be created and even more knowledge workers are going to be needed to deal with all of this content and this knowledge distribution and all of that. So I think you're right. I think they have taken your traffic, but I think you're going to be able to find ways to get it back because they have no business model that works the way it currently looks now. And I know OpenAI said that they're going nonprofit and they're going to stay nonprofit, but let's see how long that announcement lasts for, because I just don't know that you're really, that makes sense, in light of business today. Okay, so I want to end on somewhat of an empowering, forward-thinking note. So any advice that you might have to somebody who has great ideas and data, but keeps getting stuck at the budget or approval stage? What's one mindset shift or tool that made the biggest difference for you in getting buy-in? And Linda, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I would say start with just a small pilot if you can, and just do that proof of concept. So start something small. And years ago, I had this idea, and I just, wasn't sure how I'm going to be able to do this. But one of those years, we ended up having an innovation award. And I don't know if any of your hospitals have this, but, annually, there may be a way for staff or patients to be able to submit great ideas. And, those are selected, and then they're given some opportunities to have some money associated with it, and resources associated with it. So, one year I just said, should we not be sending out discharge instructions on paper anymore? Should we start switching that to video instructions, especially for some of the key things? I submitted that. I was able to, win an award with that, which gave some money, not to Linda personally, but money to then say, okay, what can we do with this money? Well, we then developed out some of those videos, and we just said new moms. And this is sort of how my new moms campaign started with just an innovation award prize that I needed some money to create these videos. And we just said, oh, can we create some videos that help moms that had a vaginal discharge, a vaginal delivery, have some education as they go home. The same thing for those with a C-section, right? Could we create that also around breastfeeding versus not breastfeeding? And so we were able to take those funds to do that. I came back and I had lots of my chart epic issues of how do we integrate that into a more automatic thing? But eventually it became a journey campaign instead, using CRM. It was data triggered automation, of a journey. So we developed it in a way that, if you delivered and you had your baby and you were discharged, safely, healthy, healthy mom, healthy baby, we put you on a journey of 7 touch points. And that was an omni-channel. You might get it by email, you might get it by text message, but it was helping you after you got discharged on your journey. So it really was sort of a patient education, really helping, strengthen that bond with your health system. But, hey, they didn't just discharge me to go home and it's good luck, but they helped me along the way. And those messages were really short and sweet. It's the first one might be just congratulations, Ahava, on your new baby. And it would include,
no babies.
it would include, oh, here are 4, pediatricians near you in case you haven't made an appointment for the baby to come back yet. And then, it just added on, if we knew by, your delivery of a C-section versus a non, we gave you that next piece. We gave you the next piece on breastfeeding or not. So all of that is just data informed, and then we delivered that next piece. But then we added in our perinatal nurses, added in it would be great if you could also do this and that to address a lot of these questions. So we added with, what about big brother and big sister at home? What about dating with your spouse during that? So we really tied this together. It wasn't just the hospital trying to get more business for you, but it was the health system really helping you and your whole family be healthy and strong together. And in the end, we would say, if you don't have primary care with us already, here are 4 locations near you to establish primary care. So it really started with hey, let me just enter this innovation award. And, and then that other thing didn't happen with Epic, implementing it in a right way. So we did it this other way. And there's also data behind each thing. So it's an always on, type of journey. So.
Yeah. And I think that's so scalable, that pilot, because you could do that, God forbid somebody has a heart attack, maybe they had a joint replacement. There's so many different major life things that happen to people that their health system needs to be there to support them in many different ways. And
compliance has to be your friend in all this. Another, another place to be very good partners with is compliance, just to make sure you're not crossing lines in anything, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. John, how about you? Do you have any bright spots about where you got stuck and how you were able to turn it around?
Yeah, I mean, we get stuck all the time, right? And you get practice getting stuck, and then then you have to always find ways in and through and around. And I would say it's the 2 Ps. One of them, Linda just touched on. The big one, I'm sure we all do this, is pilots. Again, pilot the concept, set the pilot against some very important business goal, predetermine what the success metrics are for that business goal, for that pilot, and if possible, connect it to an ROI. And start small, prove success, prove that if you give us $1, we'll make you more than $1, and then expand. Even that always doesn't always work. So the other P in my 2P little scenario would be patience. You have to have patience. You can't give up. And again, when data starts to accumulate, you have a stronger and stronger story. And again, if you have the trust of these people, and you are what we're saying, both Linda and I, it's very, very similar. We meet with these people regularly, and then so you have chances to be patient and to make your case over time.
I also find the 1A that I'll add to it is ambassadors. So if you have a successful pilot project with a stakeholder, and I know this from Aha Media Group, because if we've written content for a service line and they start to really do well, those chiefs and those doctors will tell their colleagues, you know, we invested in professionally creating content and in looking at our digital strategy in a different way, and it really resulted in results for us. And I think that if you can find the internal cheerleaders in your organization who will help turn the minds of the people who might be less resistant, I think that can also be incredibly helpful. So 3 Ps and an A is our advice to you. John, Linda, thank you so much for joining me. Any final words for our wonderful audience who has been with us today? Linda, why don't we start with you?
Oh, it's just great having this conversation with you all, and learning from John as well as Ahava on this. So I hope this was helpful. Start small and prove your case and use that data to get you more and more.
Right.
So reach out.
And Linda, this is the announcement that Linda's starting her own side hustle as consulting on creating Tableau dashboards. And John's starting a side hustle on convincing people not to buy billboards. So, right. John, what's your final word?
Exactly. My final note is that we are all in this together. The more that we share like this, as Linda just said, I'm constantly learning every day from other people in my roles and other roles similar to mine. It's really important, obviously, to do that, to go to these conferences, to sit in these conversations, to read the white papers, and then to not be paralyzed by everything that you learn. And I think, how do you eat an elephant, one piece at a time? It's like that. We have to prioritize and figure out how we start, and that we don't get overwhelmed by the challenges.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, I think for me, like what you're talking about is the educated consumer is your best customer, the Cy Sims tagline. And it's really true. I have found throughout my career that the more time I spend learning and the more time that I spend talking through the technology, the better off we all are. I have spent a lot of time talking through how LLMs work with clients and really helping them understand that it's not magic, that it's actually, a form of translation, which can be an interpretation, and thinking through how to be safe and ethical and use this very powerful, exciting technology in all of the right ways. And I found that when I sit down and have these conversations, people are afraid to say that they don't know, because they are big executives and they are supposed to know everything. But if you're good at what you do, you help them trust you by sharing that information with them and making them feel more comfortable to ask those questions and to really understand what's going on. And so that's always my first line of defense is figure out what the other person knows in the most kind, empathetic way possible, and then walk them through the story and then let them work with you as a team. Because I think, as both of our amazing panelists have shared today, it's really about engendering sort of that trust and understanding your audience so that you can help guide them along the way. And then the other thing for me is just always being open to what they have to say, because they might reframe it in a way that will help you understand it. So thank you very much for being here. I highly recommend that you follow these two gifted individuals on LinkedIn. They're really great. And if you see them at a conference, go fangirl over them, because they're both fantastic, both good friends of mine. And I really appreciate you both being here today with us to drop all your awesome knowledge. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Thank you, Ahava. I'm sure the audience joins me in thanking you, John and Linda, for that terrific discussion. And thank you to everyone in our audience for taking the time to join us today. Please note that if you've asked a question that we weren't able to get to, we'll do our best to get a response to you. We'll also be sending out a link of the webinar recording, so watch out for that in the next few days. That concludes today's program. We hope to see you at future forum webinars and mark your calendar for the Healthcare Marketing and Physician Strategy Summit, May 4th to 6th, 2026 in Salt Lake City. Please visit the forum website, healthcarestrategy.com, to learn more. Finally, be sure to give us your feedback by completing the evaluation survey as you exit the webinar. Thank you and have a great day.